is Streaming Superstars with Sammy Superstar. Tonight, it's Luis from MrCameraJunkie, and here's your host, Sammy Superstar.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to Streaming Superstars, and tonight I am interviewing Luis from Mr. Camera Junkie. He knows about all about the new Sony camera. So let's have him on. So what's
How
up?
you doing, Sammy?
I'm doing great.
Well, I'm here. I'm happy to be on the stream. I'm very lucky and privileged to be able to join you tonight. And any questions that you have about this camera, I've been researching it for a little bit over a month, and it's finally been released. But I'm
Yeah,
here to help. So any questions you have, just shoot them my way.
great. So why did Sony make this camera?
Well, that's a good question. The reason why exactly, I don't know because I don't work there. What I speculate is that they got a lot of feedback from the creator community, which spawned a lot from their previous release, the Sony ZV-1. Now, when the people released this camera, I mean, when Sony released this camera, people were complaining that it was, sorry if you hear a little noise, my son is playing in the background. He decided right now to just say, "Hey, it's playtime." Okay, but Sony, the feedback that they got from the Sony ZV-1 itself was actually that even though it was compact and it was a pretty fast fixed lens that was on it, it wasn't wide enough to be considered an actual vlogging camera. And the way that Sony's like the research and development department was thinking that they were trying to keep it within that same RX 100 type of line, the small, compact point and shoot, and with the retractable lens, keeping it a very, very thin profile, allowing you to just put it in your pocket. They didn't think that adding an extra bit of girth to add more wideness to a lens would be beneficial in this case. But the people who wanted to use it as a vlog camera kind of were disappointed with that aspect of it not being as wide as they prefer. So they ended up like another third party company decided to make an adapter that you can kind of like adhere to the front of the ZV-1. Ulanzi, I believe, is the name of the company that made this adapter, and it
Yes.
added like a good extra like uh, 3/4 of an inch to an inch of height onto the camera. And I think that's when Sony said if they are willing to add a piece of glass that totally like defeats the purpose of it being extremely compact and when extended makes it even longer just to get the extra width in the shot, then let's see if we can actually, kind of reverse engineer it. And instead of creating a new point and shoot system that has extra width, they already had their 10 to 18 lens, which is extremely wide and already part of the E mount lineup. So they took that basis. Okay. Sorry about that. They
It's
took
fine,
that
it's fine.
basis and with that they put the E mount system onto basically the ZV-1, and using the APS-C size sensor, you're going to maximize that 10 millimeter, giving you a 15 millimeter look, which is plenty wide because most of the vloggers that would use a wide lens kind of range between the 16 millimeter on a full frame lens. So the equivalent factor that you would get off of a 15, and then adding the active steady shot, like, or the active stabilization that's going to crop in just a little bit more, will actively give you like a 16 millimeter crop in an extremely small package. And it itself still gives you the ability to expand into the E mount lineup because that's what Sony wants. That's what any camera company wants. They want you to invest in their camera so that you can continue to buy their lenses. And when you already have everything, all the possibilities are finite in a ZV-1, the ZV-E10 basically opens the door to your creative imagination because you can even add telephoto zoom lenses and still keep it a relatively small package.
Yeah. So Marga
Hi, Marga.
ordered the ZV-10 yesterday. Now
Hmm.
that is amazing. So now this is the biggest question. Are you going to get a ZV-10? Because I know you have a lot of cameras, but are you actually interested and do you need it for your camera bag? And are you going to make some reviews about it?
I might rent one so that I can put all of the things to the test. And once that's available for rental, I think I'm going to grab one to see if it's something that fits for me. Personally, I own the 6100, the Sony, and because of that, I don't see the exact need of why I would purchase this camera myself. And it's not that I'm taking anything away, but as you can see in my workflow already personally, I already have my cameras, my capture cards, and a lot of things that you would need to run a live stream. I've already took care of those to this point. So there wouldn't be no reason for me to try to eliminate any of the equipment that I already have established. But if you're starting out and you're looking to get into the content creation space and this is something that interests you, this could be the ideal camera to start with because it can branch out or expand as much or as little as you want. So one of the biggest features to me is going to be the plug and play USB-C webcam utility. Like the fact that you can just plug this camera in and get a much higher quality image directly from one cable and have that same cable like keep the camera powered up and keep the battery full while you're using it to live stream or do pre-recorded content. It's not going to have that dreaded 29-59 minute limit for your video, so it's a camera that you can place in your setup and have it run basically indefinitely and record as much or as little as you want. And the fact that it's going to be so easy to plug and play is going to cater to the new demographic of content creators like Twitch streamers. People, I love the YouTube platform. And when people think of content creation, they think that this is like one of the key platforms. So if it's not for vloggers, then who is it for? There's an entire huge community of Twitch streamers that are looking to get into that aspect and trying to increase the quality of their webcam, but literally need something that plugs in and plays good with their hardware, just like a webcam. And that's where I think this camera has got it in the bag. The fact that you're going to be able to not even have to download an additional software and have the ability to just plug the camera in, get a great signal, and apply that signal with audio. That's very key because it has a pretty good microphone, so you can utilize the microphone on the camera instead of your on like the microphone that's built into your laptop. Let's say you need to connect to a Zoom meeting while you're on the road. This is really going to make a lot of difference.
So we have a couple questions already.
Great.
So if I don't have, if I didn't have the 6100, which one should I buy? Or which one would you buy?
Well, that's the whole thing. It's really hard to beat this camera if you don't have one already. Like I have an A6100, so there's no reason for me to invest into something that's going to give me very, very similar results. Now, if you're going to start out new, then there's no way that you can kind of beat this camera, for the reason that the A6100 goes for around $800 body only, and you can get this camera with the kit lens for $800. So its starting out point with the kit lens being at the price of the A6100 automatically trumps it as entry level for that,
Yes.
for that demographic. So
And I would also say it's a great feature to have a USB C. Even if you don't have a capture card yet, it will help you just getting started with your streaming career.
yeah, I didn't mention it, but that's
Yeah.
exactly one of the things that you don't need to buy when you purchase this camera. So, A6100 body alone costs the same as this one does with the lens. So, you add, let's say, the kit lens, and that's another $100. Then you're also going to need a capture card, and the most famous one is the Elgato 4K, and
Or
that
the
for
cheapo. El Cheapo.
Yep, and the cheapo would be $20, but still, that's an additional $20 that you're going to add to the budget, and that's just going to increase from there. You want to add a lens, that's up to you. If you want to increase the production value, but all of these things incrementally start increasing the price. And when you have something that is going to work in the same family as the ZV-1, meaning it's going to pretty much have everything that you need, and if you can use the kit lens, it's not like it's impossible. I actually made a recent video about the A6100's video settings, and it surprised me that when I was shooting at 16 millimeters, there really wasn't that much a difference between the kit lens at 16 millimeter and that 10 to 18 at 16 millimeter, being that 10 to 18 millimeter lens goes for $800 compared to the kit.
Great. So, Marga has a question queue. I was going to get a A6400, but went with the ZV10 because A61 A6400 has a recording limit, and ZV10 has slightly better eye detection. Am I right?
Well, to be clear, the A6400 has all of those same abilities. It does not have a record limit. It comes with one standard, but the thing is, it also comes with a heat temperature like avoidance that's also standard. So you just go into the settings of the A6400 and put that temperature of the internal overheating temperature, set that to high. And once you have that set to high, it kind of bypasses the 2959 limit, because that's kind of what that restriction is. It's not really that the camera would overheat. It was just that to prevent it from overheating in any way, shape, or form, it would limit the time at 2959 so that it would always give it a cool down period after 30 minutes. But to let anyone know, from my personal experience, I had my A6100 for a live stream, and I finished the live stream and I forgot to turn off the camera. And when I turned on my computer the next day, it had been 24 hours of the camera just sitting there being on. And I touched it and I checked it to see if it was warm or anything like that. And absolutely not. It was just like cool as a cucumber. And I still use this camera till today. So for a fact, you don't have to take my word for it. You could do a little research as well. And I believe Gene Nagata took the A6400 and was trying to do a 24-hour live stream, like 24-hour around the clock, because the camera actually has the ability to do it. But then we found out that it has a hard limit of, I believe, 13 hours of recording continuously before it kind of has to reset. So that goes to show you that, the
13
amount of,
hours?
yeah, 13 hours was the most that he was able to do it in one shot. And that's from Potato Jet Gene Nagata.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. Like,
Yeah, he was trying to do 24 hours straight. So that's even more, like out there. But it goes to show
From a
you that these
SD card
cameras,
or what?
I believe
Dummy
so.
battery?
Oh yeah, dummy battery. He had it on a tripod, and I think he was continuously like either changing the memory cards or something like that. But it was he had this entire system down, and he tried to implement it. But like I said, he even said the hardest thing was to try to schedule so many things to do in one day to fill up 24 hours of a day that would make it like stream worthy. But it goes to show you like that's exactly what he did, because these cameras actually give you that capability. But the biggest difference between the 6400 and this ZV-E10 would have to be the price, right? Because the price is such a dramatic difference, especially not even from the 6100, but the 64 that goes, I believe, closer to like $1,200, or maybe 900 if I'm correct. I believe the A6600 is 1200, but going from $600 or $700 to $900, potentially 1,000 with the kit lens, it makes a huge difference in the entire budget of what you can or can't do. Also, the fact that it is Sony's latest iteration of their camera. um, One of the things that this camera is really designed to do more than the A6600 is actually be easier to use. So it's designed so that you can pull it out of the box and be able to get the image quality and the production value that you're trying to get out of the camera without having to go like deep into the menus. And it's basically catered to the beginner content creator.
Yes. And Brian Paul has a great question. Does the A61 have 100 have a recording limit? Does it?
No, it's the same thing. Just like I had mentioned before, I left
Wow.
mine on for over 24 hours. I've done 3 and 4 hour live streams with my A6100, not a problem. And it's the same exact setup. So you would have to go into the menus and turn off the high temperature, like prefix, so to speak, the setting that's preventing it from being a high temperature heat. I forget the name of it in the menus, but once you turn off that setting, you'll be fine, and it removes that 2959 limit, and it will allow you to record indefinitely on the A6100, the 64, the 66, and now the ZV-E10.
Now that is amazing. So, I have a question for myself because everything's going back into the world, kind of, but it's going up again. But if people are going to conferences like me, I might go to a couple conferences. Do you think the ZVA10 will be nice, or you should get a couple more Sony A6100s or A5100s? Or do you think you can buy a couple ZVA10s if people really like them? And would that be good for live streaming and interviews and all that?
Well, this camera is going to be good for whatever it is that you want. I think the one thing that this camera is going to suffer on, which is something that most people don't talk about, is photography. Because I'm a photographer and I love a viewfinder. So I love putting the camera up to my eye and like removing every other aspect of the world and being able to just concentrate on the little box so that I can just scan it as fast as possible and make sure that I have the composition that I want, that I have the lighting that I want, and that I don't have any distracting objects. That's a lot harder when you're trying to use the back LCD, when you're trying to make sure that you have all of those things correct in your photos. So when it comes to photography, that's where I think this will lack a little bit, but that really depends on the photographer itself, because the majority of people who are coming into photography are coming from these devices, the
Yeah.
smartphones, and they're already used to looking and framing from an LCD on the back. So that's not going to be an issue for them. It's only going to be an advantage because it's what they're familiar with.
S-
Besides that, I think that from what I've seen, I think Mari Hapoya was talking about it himself that this camera with battery, flipped out LCD, using the 10 to 18 millimeter like ultra wide lens that Sony provides for the E mount APS-C, that entire package was lighter than just the lens that he uses for his Sony A7S III setup. So, removing the microphone and the camera itself, the lens that he uses, the 16 to 35, I believe,
yeah.
weighs more than this entire camera with the 10 to 18 lens on it. So, even he recognized the advantage of it being so light that it was just easier for him to shoot even more video because it was so light. He mentioned it in his video. He's like, I'm shooting more. I just because it's like there's zero hindrance. And the more barriers that you can remove from you to creating your content, the better it is. And that's where I think people are gonna miss like the boat on the real value of this camera, because if it's something that's going to allow you to create content easier, it's going to give you the ability to create even more content.
Yeah. So, Q, what do you think are the best lenses for these cameras?
Oh, that's a good question.
Uh,
I am
oh,
a fan of the third party Sigma lenses. I'm using the
yes.
Sigma.
Sigma 16
Even my
all the
boy's
way.
excited. I use the Sigma 16 millimeter f1.4. I love the quality that I get from this lens, but the thing that I love the most right now is what you're saying, that even though it's wide angle, it's what's called rectilinear, meaning all of the lines from this side to this side are actually like still straight upright and the way that they should be, and you don't get that really distorted fisheye effect that causes this lens to be pretty big. So for us to get that type of image, this lens is pretty hefty, but I'm willing to take the price, or like the cost of it being heavy to get the image that I want. So when it comes to these lenses, I think Sigma is a great budget alternative, because if you're using anything like me for a webcam where you don't need the image stabilization, then I could tell you that you can save a lot of money and get high quality imagery going through the third party. But in that same note, Sony has great lenses, and I've used the kit lens just the same. So it really determines on what you want to use it for and where you're going to use it. Because if you're going to be doing a lot of outdoor video or photography, the f1.4 is not going to help you as much as you think, because of the simple reason that it's going to be so fast as far as the aperture speed that even though it's at 1.4, for you to get a usable image, you're going to have to stop it down because you're outdoors. And right there, that kind of nullifies all the extra weight for the speed that you're trying to get out of this lens. And that's why I still use the kit lens quite a lot, because if I'm going to do an outdoor video, it's a lot easier for me to carry a retractable, lighter, and I mean much lighter lens that's going to do the job that I needed to do, instead of, carrying around a much heavier Sigma.
Yes. So, Austin has a great question. What is the best cheap webcam for someone starting off that is poor? I would say, now this is my recommendation, and maybe this is Lewis' idea. and this is going to be around $200 to $300. I don't know if you really want to spend that much money, but you can buy a used from eBay, a A5100, and the A5100 is a great camera. It's like the 6100. There's less features, but if you're just starting out, it would be a good starter camera. You can get into the Sony system, get some nice lenses. The stock one is pretty good. And Doc Rock is another fellow content creator. And don't you work for him now?
Yes, I'm working with Doc Rock, to better my craft.
Yes.
So I thank him for the opportunity.
But
But I actually think that it depends on the use case because
true.
the A5100 is still a pretty pricey investment when this thing right here could be the best webcam that you have.
That's
And
right.
it really depends because a lot of people misunderstand the fact of what it is that they're trying to do. And the camera on your phone is incredible. The fact that we have applications, via NDI that you can bring this in wirelessly. If you're using Ecamm, all you would have to do is plug it in directly via the USB, and the entire program is going to recognize this as your webcam. You know, a lot of us would have an extra phone that we have just laying in our drawer because it was the previous version of our latest phone. So we can have an iPhone 8 or 7 just sitting in a drawer with a very good camera doing nothing. And it doesn't need to be connected to the internet or have service applied to it. Just as long as it's working, you can download an application. I believe Epoch Cam is made from, I forget exactly who made it.
Elgato.
Oh, exactly. Elgato, which is like an $8 program that gives you a clean signal out of your phone. And just using that $8 program and a phone, you have the best $8 webcam that money can buy. That's where I would tell you, but if you want a dedicated webcam, you also have like those Logitech Brios. There's a lot of options, and Elgato, talking about them, just came out with a new face cam which tends to be looking pretty good as far as a webcam goes, and for that same price range. So if you're in the market for like that, the Logitech Brio, you might want to look at that new offering from Elgato.
Yes.
I just have to say this is a lot of fun. I love talking camera, so
Does that really work? NDI is too laggy for me wirelessly. Okay.
yeah, and that's why I said I would recommend hardwire, but
Yes.
using an Epoch cam and the hardwire, you're not gonna get that latency that you can get from a wireless signal.
And I know that you're using a Mac Pro. So I know that's Brian. I know that's a great machine. I I think you're using OBS. Maybe that's the problem because there's more issues. But I would recommend you can get EPOP cam or whatever, and you can plug it into Lightning. That's the great part of the Apple ecosystem. So, yeah,
All right. Do we have any other questions?
I think so. Okay, so Marga uses the A5100 now with the Sigma, and she loves it. So, I'm curious, why do you want to upgrade? I'm just curious because I know that's a great camera, but I feel like you should never throw away your cameras you because you could use them for second shots or whatever. What are your thoughts on that? Like,
It really depends on the use case. So
true.
if you're looking for your first camera, then that's when I would say, it depends on your use case on exactly where you're at, that's where you might be looking into a secondary phone, something like that, to replace your camera. If you already have a camera and you were looking to get that second angle camera, I don't have mine set up here as well, but I do have, yeah, like right here, I do have my secondary camera, and that's usually set up as my second angle when I do my live streams. So it just really depends on the use case. Me, I'm a photographer, so I already had this equipment, and this is what I was using for my photography. So it was just being able to kind of multi-use my cameras and apply that to what I wanted to do as far as live streaming. But when it comes to upgrading, that's something that I actually, I kind of based my channel around. Right now, I'm just going to show you a little bit. I'm wearing my shirt. It says upgrade your skills before your gear, because there has to be a specific use case for me to actually think that I would need to have to purchase something else. So to just give you a little bit of an example, the camera that I just showed here is my A7R2. The A7R2 is not any of the newest Sony cameras, but this is my main photography camera. It has 42.2 megapixels, which is more than enough than what I need. It gives me the ability to crop in and still have high quality photo images. On top of that, when it came to the specs, it being one of Sony's top of the line, or what we call flagship cameras, when it was released, it had a lot of extra features, and one of them being 4K video. It has all of the picture profiles, including S-Log, S-Log 2, hybrid log gamma. Um, it has the ability to shoot 4K, but the thing that most people did not know is that it was heavily cropped 4K. So once this camera goes into 4K mode, it becomes a Super 35 camera, which basically is an APS-C size sensor. So with understanding that, that's what really drew me to this camera, because when I was upgrading at that time, there were newer cameras that were on the market, but that weren't completely catered to my needs. I was already using APS-C cameras, so I had a variety of APS-C lenses. That was one thing. So it gave me the ability to grab this camera and start using it, even if it was in APS-C mode, with the lenses that I already had. So that was a huge positive when it came to either purchasing this or getting like an A64 6600 that I was in the market for at the time. Benefits, it's also full frame. So when it came to my photography, it was a gigantic increase when it came to my picture quality and quality of my production when it came to photography. So it was matching or exceeding every like check mark that I had for my workflow. And that was before I had the A6100. That was still when I was using the A6000. And the only thing that that camera did not do, like the A6000, the one biggest backdraw was its video recording codecs and the fact that it wasn't 4K. The reason why I wanted to jump to 4K was not even for my talking head type of portions or even live streaming. It was because I wanted to shoot better B roll. And what most people wouldn't know is that with a 4K image, it having so much information, I can crop into an image and move the image around, in post through my editing software, and get movements that are very similar to like slider shots and various different angles, because I am shooting in 4K and then having it like digitally zoom and move around the frame, even though I'm using the same static shot. So for those capabilities is why I wanted to upgrade my production and jump into the 4K field. And instead of staying in the APS-C side, I saw a camera that benefited me both in photography and video, and that was the A7R2. I picked it up, and like I said, till today, I have no issues. My boy is going ham today. But I picked it up and it had advantages even up to the A6600 because all of Sony's full frame cameras have steady shot, which is the internal body stabilization, the IBIS. So even though I was using the APS-C lenses on this camera in the cropped mode, it now gave my favorite lens, the Sigma 16 millimeter f1.4, image stabilization whenever I use it on that camera because the stabilization is built into that camera. So now with that, I'm getting the best of both worlds. And that's what made me choose this camera as my upgrade. It wouldn't be everyone's ideal camera, but for me, 2 years ago, it was absolutely perfect. And I've been happy with it ever since. Since that fact, I had the ability or the ability or the I got lucky to have found the A6100 on the used market for $500. I bought it and then sold my A6000, which was the one that I had upgraded from, for $480. So effectively, I upgraded my A6000 to the 6100 for a difference of $20. So that was a no brainer. And now those are the two cameras that I use, the 6100, the A7R2, and the fact that the A7R2 is an older camera, it still uses the NPF W50 batteries, which are traditional to the APS-C line on Sony. So it still has kept me in one type of battery, using it for both of my cameras, and I'm maximizing the most out of this setup. And for that reason, for my workflow, this works perfect, and I don't have a legitimate reason at the moment to upgrade. But that, like I said, it really comes to the use case that you're dealing with because somebody else could have a completely different workflow, not need 4K. It could have a variety of different situations. So that's why I say upgrade your skills before your gear, because once you have upgraded the skills, you will know exactly the gear that you're going to want and need for your workflow.
That is amazing. So, I really appreciated everyone that has been watching the show. I'm going to cut it a little bit shorter tonight because Lewis has to do stuff with his son, and I think his son is getting a little antsy, so that's why I'm doing a little shorter stream. Hope this helped, and I will see you next time. Peace out.
Thank you for having me, Sammy. I appreciate it.
No
Right.
problem.
Have a great
Bye.
night.